Welcome to GCSE Biology Paper 1, Bioenergetics Respiration, Lesson 4. Before we start, a few top tips on how to maintain your focus during this lesson. And as always, the run-through of the lesson. Retrieval practice, teacher instruction, some embedding, and practice. If you haven't already got your resources together, please pause and organise. Let's get started with today's retrieval practice. Here is today's biology retrieval. So pause and retrieve. Here are the answers to today's biology retrieval. Pause and revise. Today's chemistry retrieval. Pause and retrieve. Here are the answers. Please pause and revise. Today's physics retrieval. Pause and retrieve. Here are the answers to today's physics retrieval. Please pause and revise. Before we move on to today's new knowledge, here are the answers to yesterday's practice questions. So here are the answers to questions 1 to 4. Please pause and check. The answers to question 5. Again, please pause and check. Question 6. Pause and check. And finally, question 7. Please pause and check. So now let's move on to some teacher instruction. The resources that you need are here. If you haven't already printed them out, please pause and organise. In today's lesson, we're going to look at how the body responds to exercise. So the first thing I want you to do is a little activity. In a moment, I'll want you to stand up. If it's safe, make sure that there's nothing around you that you can hurt yourself with. And I would just like you to run on the spot, or if you prefer, you can do some press-ups. But what I want you to do is make a note of how your body is responding to this exercise. So off you go then, 30 seconds, running on the spot or doing press-ups. Hopefully you've done that and you've made a note of how your body's activities changed to help you to exercise. So let's have a look at what happens then. So what happens to your respiration rate when you exercise? So let's talk about what's happening when we exercise. To exercise, our muscles have to contract to cause the movement. And of course, to be able to contract, they have to carry out respiration, because respiration transfers energy from glucose. Now, if the muscles are respiring aerobically, we need oxygen. And we get that oxygen when we breathe in. The oxygen travels down into the lungs and then diffuses into the blood and is carried to the muscles where aerobic respiration takes place. Now, because we're carrying out more movement, the muscles are contracting more often, and to contract, they need more energy. So one thing you would have noticed is that your breathing rate increased. So you're breathing more regularly, more frequently. And also the volume of each breath is increased. You're taking in more oxygen because your muscles need that oxygen to respire aerobically. Yeah. What you should have also noticed is your heart rate will have increased, because your heart would start pumping faster to pump that oxygen as quickly as it could to the muscles, so that aerobic respiration could take place and the muscles would then have the energy to contract. So the answer to the question, what happens to your respiration rate when you exercise, is it increases. Okay, and it increases because the muscles require more energy to contract, and to get more energy, the muscles have to respire more often. And if they're respiring aerobically, they need more oxygen. So breathing rate increases, volume of breath increases, and also heart rate increases to get that oxygen to the muscles for that aerobic respiration. So let's write that down. The basic answer to the question is respiration rate increases. Why does it increase? Because the muscles need more energy to contract. So if they're going to respire aerobically, they need more oxygen. To gain more oxygen, breathing rate and breath volume increases. And to get that oxygen to the muscles, the heart rate increases. As well as getting oxygen to the muscles, carbon dioxide has to be carried away. So the blood also carries the carbon dioxide to the lungs. And when you breathe out that carbon dioxide. Now, the thing is, we've been talking about aerobic respiration, but what happens if oxygen doesn't get to the muscles quickly enough? Well, we know, don't we, that anaerobic respiration takes place. Because anaerobic respiration is less efficient than aerobic respiration, this leads to what we call an oxygen debt. So what is an oxygen debt? An oxygen debt is simply a temporary oxygen shortage in the body. This lack of oxygen leads to anaerobic respiration, and that causes a buildup of lactic acid. And the lactic acid builds up simply because the glucose is incompletely broken down. Okay, it's not completely broken down to carbon dioxide and water, it's just broken down to lactic acid. And this creates the oxygen debt. So why must the lactic acid be removed from the body? The body's tolerance of lactic acid is limited. It has adverse effect on the body. It can lead to cramps, it can lead to you feeling sick, nausea, and your muscles become fatigued and they stop contracting efficiently. So how do we get rid of lactic acid? How is this oxygen debt repaid? Well, the first thing that happens is the lactic acid is taken from the muscle cells to the liver via the bloodstream. In the liver, the lactic acid is either oxidized, so reacted with oxygen to form carbon dioxide and water, or it's converted to glucose and then stored as glycogen. So that causes the levels of glycogen in the liver and the muscles to increase back to their normal level. Now, both of these processes, as I've alluded to, require oxygen. Okay, this is why when you've done like a 100-meter sprint, at the end of the sprint, you're breathing rapidly and you're breathing deeply and your heart is still pounding to get the oxygen to the liver to break down that lactic acid and remove it from the cells. What I would like you to do now is embed all that new knowledge. So can you pause and embed? Now that you've embedded today's knowledge, I would like you to practice using that knowledge. So here are today's SLOP questions. Questions 1 to 3, question 4 and 5, question 6, and question 7. What I've also done for you is I've enlarged the graph so it's easier for you to work from if you're working from the screen. So there it is. Can you now pause and SLOP? Answers will be discussed in the next lesson. Until then, do some retrieval practice if you need to. You will have the recall test on Friday. Complete the SLOP and let other people know about the video. Until then, see you soon.